Hi, everyone. Welcome. Well, I'm sitting in Texas. I don't know where you are in the world, but welcome to another episode of the podcast, The Expat Life, where we travel around the world. And today we're going to end up in a little town close to the Swiss border, but in France. I think the name was Anise. I do speak French, but I'm not going to try because that was 15 years ago. Welcome to the show, LeeLee Genovese.
Hello. Thank you. It's nice to be here, Cecilia.
So, just with that introduction and listening to you, you do not sound French.
Surprise! I am not American in France here. Third time living here in France, and the town is Annecy. Yes, very close. Yeah, very cute little rustic town in the Alps. So,
Do you ski?
do I ski?
Yeah,
I love skiing. Yes, of course. This is a long story. We could talk about expat experiences with the credit card, Visa, bank information. We need a couple days to talk about it. So, but we haven't been able to, and this might be an excuse, buy some stuff online to go skiing. So that is an excuse not to get out there. But at the same time, we've had 2 months of fun, exciting back and forth with our French bank because they've changed banks. So it's never boring in France.
So I know I gotta ask you here, from my own experience living in Europe, France is one of those countries where I think it's 80% of what's broadcasted on TV and radio and social media has to be in French and cannot be in any other language. Is that correct? Do you know
I
that?
don't know that statistic actually, but it's French everywhere, and that would make sense.
They're very aware. They're very caring about their heritage and their language that people
Yeah,
don't understand.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I know when I was in France a couple of times, um, it was a little bit you almost insulted a Frenchman if you didn't speak French.
Oh.
Have you experienced that?
I actually appreciate you bringing that up because I think like commonly people think French are rude, and I think it's more so because of this exact fact that they appreciate their language and like the when in Rome idea. When you're in France, I mean, their language is French, so speaking it is like the number one thing I would recommend, like learning a little bit when you come here. But yeah, so that would be the case. Funnily enough, like I've lived in France twice before, and this area, or maybe this time of life, and people are learning English more. There's actually a lot more people that speak English and want to do that, or maybe it's just like I put myself in international groups, and there's more people. It could be both of those. But I'm here with my Japanese husband, and he does not speak English, so he finds it is a little more difficult. So maybe I'm not realizing the fact that I do speak English. It is a little easier. So and just more respectful.
Do you speak?
Pardon?
How many languages do you speak?
I'm still working on English for starters, but I speak English and French, I would say. Japanese also like a child, but we all have to start somewhere, and and a little Spanish, but I wouldn't say I could have full.
Now, if your husband is Japanese here, now I'm really curious here. Your husband is Japanese and he does not speak English. How do you communicate?
We speak in. Oh no, he doesn't speak French. So being in France, but we speak in Japanese a little, but mostly English.
Okay, gotcha. I thought
He's actually working in English here. Pardon? I don't mean to.
and he didn't speak English, and I'm like, I'm not gonna work out. Holy moly!
This is important for everyone who's listening. That you're an expat. That gestures and sign language is very valuable, especially at the beginning. So.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine. He's American, and he met a Mexican wife, and he does not speak Spanish, and she did not speak English whatsoever. And the stories that he can tell, they are hilarious because it was sign language all on. Now they've been married for many years, but so both of
I
them.
love that.
Yeah,
I love that story, and it's a very common situation. So yeah, it's good to know that that is possible too.
how did you end up from Alaska via Oregon and now for the third time in France?
Oh gosh, that's a long time ago. But where did that all start? Like in high school, I had the most amazing friend whose family was English, and they were part of Rotary. So, as a young child, they brought us to England, and then further, I was a Rotary exchange student in Belgium, and then I just loved it. And I didn't speak a word of English when I went there so long ago, but after 3 months of crying and adapting and learning French for the first time, I figured it out and I stuck it out. And then I really wanted to keep the language, so I went back to France to teach and kept going. And I could talk all day about that. So, um, yeah.
Traveling all over the world. Where else have you been than France?
Um, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Senegal in northeastern Africa, northwestern. I always do that backwards. Northwest Africa. Last 7 years of my life in Japan, where I met my husband as I was teaching and advising international students there. And yeah.
Wow. You've been all over the world, literally. Like you have US and then you have Japan and now you're in the France, which is basically in the middle, and you even have the Eiffel Tower here in between us.
Yes, that's hilarious. And then Japanese Mount Fuji. Like, we're bringing the world together here today. So
That's fun.
that is funny.
Yeah. So how many years, how long time have you been in France now the last time?
This has been 11 months now, and not a boring time at all in transitioning. Like we were talking before, it's been actually one of the most difficult transitions into a country and back into France for the third time. And I think it's really valuable for your listeners to hear a story like that, because I think it's a beautiful thing, because we can be humbled by like the difficulties of life, and also thinking like a second or a third time, whether this is moving abroad or doing anything in life, that it should be easier. We have expectations that it should look a certain way. And for me, I was like, this is going to be no problem. But then we get here, and literally it took us 3.5 months to find an apartment. And if you want to talk about French bureaucracy, it took like 30 plus documents. And every day it seemed like they wanted something different to even look at apartments, and then bank stuff. And I'm not complaining. I just think it's very important to be aware that like the preparation, and if anybody's coming to France, let me know. I can tell you all the things they're looking forward to taking from you, translations, etc. Yeah.
Because again, you coming to, even though you've been in France before, you thought this was going to be an easier rodeo than the last times. But even though the documentation here in US, you have very often always documentation in English, but
Yeah.
then you have often documentation in Spanish, because we have a lot of Spanish speaking people. France doesn't have that. It's documentation in French and not very much in English. Am I correct?
Yeah, everything, even the smallest thing, you would think like 3 lines, got to have it translated and notarized typically. So it's extra money. I mean, a notary could be quite expensive for each page. We were very fortunate in the sense that my husband's company that we moved here with helped us with the financial end of that. So I can understand how that can be something to prepare for in advance for others who don't have that service. But make sure maybe keep the documents, because I'd been here before and I had my birth certificate already translated. If you've done something like that, or maybe doing it at a consulate in the States or wherever you live prior to going, could be a little less expensive. But yeah, not bored with gathering all the information. And then on top of like the information just for our financial background, and like birth certificates and documentation and IDs, and also we had a guarantor, which also required a very vulnerable conversation with a friend. I was so fortunate, which is actually a very big blessing, because most places need a guarantor in France, because they have this apartment law where like tenants can move at any time, so they don't usually take anyone unless they have a guarantee, obviously. And I had to ask financial records from a friend to have, and it was, for me as Americans, so awkward, but as French people, because it's so expected, it's like very normal, and it wasn't so awkward for them. And I was like, sorry to them the whole time, and they're like, it's just c'est la vie, it's like this. So
That's just the French life. How do you feel like the French life is different from the American life?
I'm not surprised at that question after that conversation I just had. Paperwork wise, it feels more. Another adjustment, which is hilarious. Something I knew prior is when you eat at night, or when you go out I'm really still struggling 11 months into, because I like to be home like 8 or 9 at night and settle down, and I like to get up early, but people don't go out until 7 at the earliest. I've been so many times to play meetups, and people say we're meeting at 7 and they show up at 7:40. And I'm like, da-da-da, when will it be night? So this is a huge adjustment, which is so strange because I'm used to European times and how people eat later, and nightlife is a big thing, and I appreciate that, but at the same time I'm like resisting still. So prepare for that if you're planning on France, especially Spain is even later, as I think a lot of people know. But
Yeah, they are nice people.
yeah,
They're not
we're,
the morning person.
yeah. If you're a night owl, come on over. Definitely gonna fit your vibe.
How about food?
Food. I think I've gained 10 pounds of baguette. Nobody.
I love it. I love
Pardon?
it. I love baguette. I miss
Me
it.
too.
You can't get a
Oh.
good baguette over here in Texas. I'm telling you that.
I wish we could have a baguette and sit and chat over that.
Yeah.
Yes, food is. I actually cook a lot for myself, so I don't eat out a lot. But there's a lot of good food. I'm not sure. My husband's actually adjusting not well, very well to that, which is quite interesting. I always see him in the corner, like looking at Japanese Instagram, like dreaming of going home of Japanese food. So for him, it's actually a beautiful, beautiful understanding of our relationship to see his reaction as a Japanese person in so many ways, and also me as an American, and then just what comfort foods are, or expectations in life, or how you react to everything. So move with your husband is one of the best ways to grow your relationship, or the reverse, but it's been positive for us.
Right. But and I guess the American food are closer to the French menu than what
Right.
the Japanese are. Like, how do you have, like, here we have a lot of, at least because I live in Texas, a lot of
Yeah.
Mexican influences,
Mm.
and you can really see a lot of Japanese influences in France, I believe.
You're correct for the most part, but I think things are becoming more international. You can find international shops. There are ramen shops here and Asian food stores, Thai and Vietnamese. But again, like when you Americanize it or Frenchize it, it's not the same as home. So sometimes that can, but you can also go to Asian stores and create your own. So that's what is a good thing to think about. Like you can always find that if you go to a local bigger town. Luckily, NSC is not too small. So if you're planning on going abroad, there's always a market with even taco shells or a burrito shells or all the fixing for that. Of course, typically a little more expensive because it's imported, but that can be real. I can't think in English right now. I'm thinking soulager, relaxing or comforting to your heart to know, okay, I can find the things. And I think a lot of people planning to go abroad think, I've got to pack all these things, fill my suitcase with the spices, which I did a little bit because Costco sizes are just so nice. But that's a whole nother story. But still, you can find everything you need in France, in Japan. Uh, yeah, it's actually one of my favorite things, like going through store aisles and seeing, like, I don't drink Dr. Pepper, but I see Dr. Pepper and it's just comforting to see things that you recognize. Um, Also Pringles. Pringles, even though I probably shouldn't eat as many as I do, they've always been like, I don't even know if they're American, but they make me think of home. And
Yeah.
even if you don't eat those things, it makes you feel like, oh, there's a little piece of, it's the little things, Cecilia,
Yeah.
that make you remember home and not too far away.
It's the same thing because everybody thinks meatballs are Swedish, right?
All right.
And I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. Meatballs are Swedish.
Yeah.
They're not
Yes.
Turkish at all. They're Swedish. You know.
Yeah.
And for me, being a Swede living wherever in the world, thank you, IKEA, for being such an
Yeah.
international company. I can go wherever, even
Right.
though they're now a Dutch company, if you didn't know that. And
Mm.
they have reduced their Swedishness a lot.
Mm.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Yeah. It's not good at
But
all.
originally Swedish.
Right.
Da-da-da.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where you know that when you go worldwide, find an IKEA and you'll find the Swedish connection.
Yeah.
They still have their food mart or whatever you want to call it, food
Mm.
court. You can get some Swedish stuff, but it's not to the extent that it once was.
Yeah. Now I want to go to IKEA.
Right. Go through the maze of furnitures before you make it to the
Yeah,
end where where the food
great. They make you work for it. But I
Yes,
think it's a small thing, but it's actually a big thing when you move abroad to have those little glimpses of home or reminders that, okay, you can go to these places or you can get the food that is comforting and is so important, especially if you haven't moved abroad before. Maybe even bringing a couple of the things to make sure that you have those comfort foods is it's really helpful in like when you get homesick or just wanting a taste of home.
yeah. How about traditions? Do you have any American traditions that you have that's important to keep for you, regardless of where in the world you live? And what about for your husband?
Oh gosh.
I
Well,
don't
first,
know anything about Japanese traditions. So, is there anything that he wants to keep on, and anything that you wants to keep on, regardless where in the world you live?
yeah. Well, first of all, with my husband, we don't really do New Year's resolutions, but we do carry on our own little traditions to like start the new year, and it's a more Japanese tradition in that we eat noodles. So long noodles that represents long life, and it has to be cooked a certain way. And my husband does it all, so I appreciate that. But we eat noodles the end of the new year and start the year with this just thinking of positive goodwill and longevity. And so that's about food. And also the one that's American is also Thanksgiving, which is not a surprise. I've actually cooked Thanksgiving in 5 different countries, and I've had people from Iceland, my Icelandic friends, they like asked me for the recipes, and now they do an annual Thanksgiving because they really enjoyed the one that we did together. And I just love Thanksgiving. I usually don't go back home every time I live abroad, and when I go back home, I'm like, why can't we be thankful every day? And we've done Thanksgiving in summertime, and I just love that tradition.
Right, being thankful for being able to see other cultural and see other parts of the world, I guess.
Yeah, and to share our own culture as well with others and the why and the best parts about it. I guess we do eat a lot, but Thanksgiving, I really do believe gratitude is such a powerful tool, and sharing that with others is a beautiful thing. So,
Yeah, and what about
other traditions. Pardon?
French traditions? What does French people do on a yearly basis? Do they have Thanksgiving or anything like that?
Mm. Thinking of traditions and food, and something I'm actually glad I didn't participate in this year is I remember the last time I lived in France during the New Year's or Christmas, they often eat like snails or oysters, which a lot of people like those. And I have no problem with snails, but when I refuse the oysters because I'm not really a fish
Seafood.
shellfish. See, I don't even know shellfish kind of person. They offered me 2 plates of escargot. So snails are when they're really buttery and garlicky, okay, but then there's a texture thing. But I do recommend trying them because they are tasty and it's an experience. But different tradition, eh?
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I'm allergic to sea fish, so oysters are is out of
Yeah,
the.
two
I
plates of escargot for you.
yeah, no, thank you. I have actually tried it, and I did not like it. And it was a texture thing.
Yeah,
I can't even explain the texture of a snail.
yeah, it's very chewy and
Yeah,
the sound that comes along with the the chewy texture. It's just all the senses. It's like a common, like a symphony of the things you don't want in your head or mouth.
symphony of things you don't want. That I like it.
Mhm. Yes, a song for other people, maybe. Da-da-da.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, now I wonder how many of our viewers or listeners wants to dare trying that
Yeah,
after this. But we
yeah.
do have somebody here in East Texas who had an oyster last week and found a pearl in the oyster.
Wow,
Yes, I
really?
saw that on social media here the other day, and it was
Cool.
yeah, I'm not sure if it was in this town, Wills Point, or if it was one of the neighboring towns. But it was a kind of big deal, and it was a good sized little pearl there.
Well, any size doll, I imagine, is not very common. I wonder if it was at a restaurant. Now I'm thinking, like, who's claiming it? Like how that all ended.
It was at a restaurant. She was out eating, but I think if she would have swallowed it and missed it.
Ah, what a missed opportunity, or another opportunity of the after process of. in right.
An oyster. Yeah, no, for me, oysters just look slimy and nasty, so I'm not really of that. Yeah.
You are not alone.
No, no, I'm not an oyster person, no,
But here's to we like to share the oysters and let everyone else have the oysters. We're so thoughtful.
absolutely, we'll give it to somebody who loves it 'cause I'm
Yeah.
not. So what, from the French cuisine do you love except the oyster or in the
Mm.
snails? What of, like, daily food? Does French people cook a lot themselves, or do they go out and eat?
Um, I think a lot of people go out. Again, I've lived with French families and a lot of cooking together. I'm not living with a French family now, so I make a lot of Asian dishes at home. But maybe typical here in the region is like cheesy dishes like tartiflette, which is potatoes and ham bits and onions and cheese, which
Oh,
since it's winter, it's so
good.
cozy. Very lots of cheese and melted cheese like fondue and those types of things, very regional. So we've seen many restaurants like that, and it is very good. But I think after one night, you need a couple weeks, or I think a year off before you eat more. But
They must have cholesterol problem. Everybody in France must have cholesterol problems.
this is interesting. I'm now just hearing you say that. Maybe that's why people are so active here. I mean, we have the mountains and we're right on a lake, and it's a really, really active place. But I think they just have to counter like the food that we're eating. Joke. I'm not sure, but probably.
No, but they are working out more. They're moving more around
Mm.
on a daily basis than an American. Am I right or wrong?
Well, I kind of giggled there a little because every country I've ever been to, and I've been to over 65, people move more everywhere else than America. I love you, America. Movement is a beautiful thing, and I think it makes sense with like the daily life. Like things are closer here. People ride bikes or walk more. In the U.S., the distance is very. That's not an excuse, but the distance is a lot larger, and I think that's what we've been used to: getting in the car and going places versus walking or taking our bike down to the shop or something. Um,
And
so
I agree with that. I live literally 3 blocks away from the post office.
yeah.
I walk to the post office, and the
Hmm.
crew, the people who works there, they're like, "Did you walk here today?" 'Cause, even if it's 100 degrees outside, you get a little bit hot walking.
Yes,
Uh,
even standing outside.
Getting a workout out of it.
Hmm.
And I'm like, "Of course I'm walking." They're like, "Oh my god. It's 3 blocks. It took me less than 10 minutes to walk here." Instead of fueling up the car, getting down. It takes me almost as long to just get down with the car, and I get
Yeah.
a workout out of it.
I
So,
think it makes sense, and it's easy to see the difference when I've lived abroad, but I think it's just a matter of habit, and that's something that we can change if we want to. But I'm so glad that you walked to the post office and also opened the eyes of those people in the post office that what is possible, a small thing like that. But I get to,
I'm the walking Wonder Woman in this town, literally because I walk my dogs all
yeah.
the time, and I power walk myself. So it has happened. I went to the donut store and picked up donuts for an event, and one of the Wills Point City of Wills Point employees was there, and he's like, "Oh, how are you? Are you doing well? How are your dogs?" And I was like, "Excuse me? Who
Mhm.
who are you? Like, who do you know who I am?" Because it's like, "No, we keep an eye out of you. Are you out walking so nothing happens to you or your dogs?" Wasn't that so sweet? But it was
Yeah.
really, yeah, exactly. I got really heartwarmed by it, but it was really like, "Oh, yeah, I guess people see me when I'm out walking, and hopefully that inspires somebody."
Yeah. No, obviously it has, at least people are watching you. It
Right.
could be seen as both nice and creepy, but that's very thoughtful.
I think I want to see it from the nice,
Of course.
uh,
Yeah.
aspect, just simply because if something would happen, at
Yeah.
least hopefully somebody would help me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, right.
Yeah.
So
That's wonderful.
you've lived in 65 places around the world. Where do you love to be the most?
Ooh, well, been to, not lived, but that's hard. I it's a beautiful question. There's something about Japan, and maybe it's biased because I found my dear husband there, but it's so different from most places, as people probably imagine, than what Europe or the US. And there's something just so serene and calm and like comforting about like the kindness and the politeness of people. And it's so strange, a dichotomy, because people aren't easy to befriend there because they aren't like as open as talking to just random strangers as we are in the US or even in Europe. But still, it seems safe and comforting. Like there, you can leave your bag on a coffee shop table and it'll be there when you come back from the bathroom, or if you drop something along the way to the bus stop or train station, people will put it aside. And if you come back, it will be there. I've lost several things and it just ends up at this little police box next to the train station and I can go get it. So these are very tiny things, but something from where I was living in Portland, Oregon would not be the case.
Oh,
Necessarily, which is so sad, but it's still like that in Japan. But also every season there, they make it a big deal. Like if it's winter, they have like even the Starbucks or the coffee shops or the windows. It's all. I know we do that in countries too, but they make things like just festive at every season, and it's just really fun to see the calendar roll out. They even for the cherry blossoms, they have a calendar for cherry blossoms, like when this tree in the south of Japan blooms for the first time, it's cherry blossom season. So they make it just like a big deal. And also about Japan, they have mascots for literally everything, for companies, for regions, for cities, for businesses. And they have a competition, like the which one's the best and what cutest. And it's just, there's a word in Japan called kawaii, which means cute. And it's just, everything's so cute in Japan. And it makes you feel like a child. And when you go to Disneyland or Disney Sea in Japan, it's just like everything's like,
wait, what? Disney Sea? I
yeah,
have
that's
heard of
true.
Disney something in Japan.
Surprise, life-changing information, right?
Oh,
They do.
what is this? Tell me.
They have two Disney lands. Well, one is land and one is sea. And then the sea one is just actually, if you're an adult, they say to go to that one because that's the one that has alcohol if you drink alcohol. And the other one is for the kids because it's more the traditional Disneyland.
Is one in the north part of the country and one is the southern? Are they close?
They're literally right next to each other, and they're close to Narita Airport north of Tokyo. So if you just got to go there, stop over, and you can get to Disneyland or sea quickly. But yeah, it's quite fascinating how much people dress up. One time I actually dressed up as a chipmunk with another lady who was wearing chipmunk outfit. And it's fun. It's, you can be yourself because I'm really a chipmunk. But there was a baby chipmunk that recognized us strangers, but we were wearing the chipmunk outfit, and it just the little girl ran after us like we were the family. Cutest moment ever. But just a happy place. Disney's got it right.
But
Happy.
there is a Euro Disney in France.
Yes.
Have you
And
been there?
I have actually never been to that one. Now it's a goal because there's also one in Hong Kong and one in Shanghai. And I've been to the Hong Kong one. So if you're a Disney fan, like where are all the the Disneylands? And
Which is very embarrassing.
no
True.
worries.
I'll be there.
They're kind of spread out. So if that's a goal for you, could be fun.
Yeah, I like to travel, so why not? Like, absolutely,
Which one would you like to go to of all of them?
all of them. Now I found 3 more that I didn't even
Oh no, I've created a list for you.
right? No,
Happy dreams.
yeah, no, I guess the one in Florida, in Orlando is the closest, so I'll probably start there.
That's good. Yeah. And that's Disney World, so it's got a little taste of all of them, I think, right?
I don't know.
I got really excited
I
there.
love everything Disney, sorry.
No worries. Sometimes it's best just to go, and this is like a metaphor for going abroad, being an expat. Sometimes not knowing all the information and going can be the best thing to do because you don't have expectations, and then everything's a surprise and you can build from there.
And that takes me back to actually asking you when we were talking about earlier, this is the 3rd time, and it's been, quote, unquote, "the most complicated," transition for you. Do you think that one of the reasons that it was one of the more complicated ones could be because you had anticipations because you've been there twice already?
100%. And that's a beautiful thing to realize because I was like, I've lived there before, no problems. But I lived and worked for the government here and they took care of housing and everything. So it was a really easy transition. And also, I was doing it on my own with my own community built in with the job I had. And this time I moved here with my husband who has the job. And now I have my own business. So I'm a different person. And I think that's really important to remember if you've traveled abroad or studied abroad and you go back anywhere, or even in life when you've done something even simple as like a habit that you do, playing a guitar or um, meeting people or networking. Like it's important to remember, like you're always growing too. You're a different person that is not always going to be as easy the second time around, and that's been so comforting to come back to and realize I'm a new person. I have different skills to bring to this. I have some new things to experience and explore and figure out. And you might be able to tell, but I love growth and I love like challenges because it's the best way to grow. And for me, in what I do in life, and just having studied abroad so much and lived abroad, it's such a valuable thing to build resilience, know that I can get past this difficult time and figure it out. And yeah, I could keep going, but it was the best thing for my relationship too. As an American, I was saying, and my husband's Japanese, to understand like how we are reacting to these different challenges and trials, and coming back to talking about our expectations and how we can support each other. And even if you don't have a spouse, like doing that for yourself, like I talk on my phone and like coach myself and like ask myself questions, or I make video recordings of how I'm experiencing this so that I can go back. And I think this is so valuable to do in some way for people who move abroad, to remember how far you've come, how much you've overcome, like how many steps you've or struggles you've surpassed and made them your strengths. Just awesome. Lots of good stuff.
Writing a diary has always been very empowering for me and very
Mhm.
inspirational. Just being able today to go back and see what I wrote all these years ago when I moved here. And people
Well,
are like, oh my God, you blog. Yeah, I do blog. And if you don't know, swedentexas.com is my blog.
oh,
And
cool.
yeah, that's my personal blog. And I restarted it when my mom died 3, 4 years ago,
Mm.
because I knew that was going to be so life changing. Even though I have been living here since 2008, I've always had her. Now I had to transition to a life completely alone, and how
Yeah.
that was. Yeah, I knew but it was still the Swedish part of me that made me a little bit confused of what am I gonna do here? So just being able to go back in that blog and say, "Oh yeah, I did this just a couple of years ago. That's right. That was a fun thing." Or "Holy crap, did that really happen? I did not remember that." Even
Yeah.
you don't have to put it out as I did in a blog, but just writing it down. First of all, I believe it's good mentally, but the the fun of looking back and oh,
Mm. Oh, thank you for sharing that, Cecilia. That's so powerful, especially with that transition with your mother. And I'm glad you had that resource that helps in that way, like with all different types of transitions to like just understand like what you're experiencing. But there's so much we could talk about there. But also, yeah, going back and celebrating like how far you've come and how you've transitioned, and also getting ideas of like, okay, that works, that didn't work. What am I struggling with? And like figuring out a way through that way is so helpful.
do you now you've lived a couple of places around the world. I know that I moved here. I came to Texas November 15th. I always celebrate that day. Do you
Oh,
celebrate your move anniversary? Is that even a word?
mm, it
But
is now, and it works, and I get it. And this is not something I do specifically. I celebrate. Well, I mean, I celebrate anniversaries with my husband. We just celebrated 10 months. Like, so we do it whenever the feeling strikes. I think that's a beautiful thing too. Like, we think it has to be on a certain date, and then if we miss it, maybe people just don't. That's a small thing, but anytime you feel like celebrating, I think it's underrated, maybe in the US or everywhere. Like, the little things and the big things, like heck, I took my dog to the vet in a different language, or I actually ordered my coffee at the coffee shop. Like those little things are not too small to celebrate, especially if you move abroad and you're learning the language.
oh yeah.
Um, Two big things like your move anniversary, I think definitely I probably do, but yeah, pay more attention to that.
I always have my chocolate cake on that day. I need
Yeah,
it. I'm a chocolate fan, so, but
yeah,
it's fun that you brought this up with language, because this is something that happened to me when we moved here. I had another Dalmatian at the time. His name was Dime.
yeah,
Dime had to go to the vet. It was something minor. Can't even remember what it was, but we had been here 3, maybe 4 weeks.
yeah.
He Went to the
Mhm.
vet, and here in the US, it's completely different going to the vet than compared to Sweden. They take your dog to the back and do the exam and do everything, and you get the dog back. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. That dog stays in here. He's not going anywhere. And the vet's like, okay, not happening. And he was fine with it, not a problem. So me and the vet is talking in English, and suddenly both me and the vet is looking at the dog, and we see him sit like this, looking at the vet, looking at me, looking at the vet, and he's like, you could tell the dog could not figure out the language.
Oh, interesting.
And the vet actually said, "Do you think it's a problem he doesn't understand?" So I switched to Swedish and said, "It's okay, Dime. It's fine. We're not having a stroke, neither of us." I said something calming in Swedish, and the dog takes a big sigh. Okay, I guess it's gonna be.
Oh.
And the vet, he was just like, "Oh my god, I've never seen that before." But of course, I've been like, mom and I spoke Swedish at home. I speak Swedish to my dogs, still do today, even my deaf dog. It's important. That's how I keep my language going, right?
Yeah.
But never would I have expected that. I was not on my radar to expect that the dog of all kinds would be confused going to the vet, that he didn't understand what we were saying. Got worried that something was bad was gonna happen. And then
Hmm.
it was just like, okay. After that, he was perfectly fine.
Wow,
But it
that's so.
it was very interesting to see even a dog could be confused over a quote unquote language barrier.
Mm,
I don't know if that's the right word, but you see what
yeah.
I'm saying? So
Yeah.
even involving and including your animals, your pets, cat, dog, whatever it may be, might actually be a good idea.
Yeah. No, I had never experienced something like that, but I believe it, and obviously that was what happening there, and that's, oh, your little buddy. Oh,
So
understand.
yeah, but it was even until today. I'm like, yeah, my dogs are actually bilingual because
That's
I
amazing.
speak Swedish to them, and then people are coming over or whatever, and they know English. And of course, my deaf dog, my big dog, that squeeze in here sometimes, Bam Bam, he doesn't know anything because he doesn't hear. But
Yeah.
Wix, absolutely, he knows both
You
Swedish and
know,
English
yeah.
perfectly well. So there's
That's
one.
a beautiful story, and I think it's a great reminder for us all that we can all adapt. Even our puppies and our pets, they'll adapt. It might be hard at first; they'll be confused and like wondering, but they'll catch on eventually. That's amazing. That makes me think. If you, I hope this is okay to share, but like going to doctors in other countries is never a boring thing because it's completely different. And then you have the emotional affect of like, this is actually kind of important. I don't want to die or blah blah blah. So in Japan, every woman should get checked annually. And my experience in Japan was very, very awkward in that when you go get checked, they have this curtain which like cuts you in half, like on your stomach. They'll put a curtain up so the doctor will go around to the other side and you can't see what's going on. And it was just so awkward because I heard more than one voice behind the screen checking me out. And it's just something to be prepared for, how in different countries that and most medical procedures can be different. Even
Yeah, that's weird.
there's that. It's a real way to just be open in all ways. La la la. Quelle chance. What luck.
That's interesting. Have you had to go to the doctor in France and experience any differences in the healthcare and how the doctors take care of patients there?
I have. It's not as extremely different as that one in Japan, but there was an issue here. I had to get some vitamins from the doctor, actually medication for a thyroid also, and it was the first time ever having to take medication. And then I was questioning, like, do French people push medication? I don't know. And people were saying yes. And then I was trying to ask questions because when you Google it, it always ends up in cancer. So I was like, what's wrong with me? And the doctor, right? So Google doctor is not our friend. We all know that, but I do it anyway. We do it anyways.
We do it
Uh,
anyway, yeah.
but when you don't know and you don't have any idea what something might mean, I was asking in like the chat that they have, the system for chatting with the doctor. I chatted with them and asked them a couple questions, and they just sent me like the slips to go get medicine, and then Then another day, I asked a question and they didn't respond, but my message said they did, and I went in there excited to hear what's wrong with me, and they just closed the chat, like they stopped the conversation. So I'm like, here,
You're
okay,
dying.
I have no idea what I could do to help with the situation, and I had a little bit of anxiety over that, but I'm just laughing at it now, like, this is how it is. C'est la vie, que sera, sera, my mottos for life in France. But it is something to be prepared for. Um, Not a big difference, but now I'm thinking of I took my husband because he doesn't speak French to the doctor the other day. Ended up getting like those little things all over his body because the doctor was like, "Let's just do a whole check." And my whole poor husband there laying on the bed with all these sticky things to check his heart. And I'm not sure all the technology terms, but um, I don't know. Logic or explanation is lacking, and it's not a barrier in language because I speak French, but it's just like what do they think should be done or shouldn't be informed. So never boring.
Interesting. I bet that going to the doctor in Japan and in Asia is quite different from US and Europe.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. It was harder too because the language barrier for me in Japan. I remember I was sick one day and I went in there, and you're in there with your phone, like trying to Google Translate, and you do what you can and you get what you get. But I remember one time I was like taken to this dark, cold, seemed in my head, it's all kind of scary. I was thinking like this is like a dark, cold room. Where am I going? And they put like an IV in me because I was having like cold symptoms and they're putting like liquid fluids. I still don't know what happened. So a lot of trust. And I'm still here, so I'm glad to tell the story.
Right.
Maybe I should question more in life. You've got me thinking. No, but I trusted them enough. And it was just giving me fluids because I had a cold or something. But
Dehydrated. Yeah.
I'm just making that up. It could have been anything, but it sounds good for just that story. But
Well, if you don't know the language and they're putting stuff in you, I think that was scary. Like,
yeah,
especially like even though you get a banana mix here that we call that's kind of a vitamin stuff, but it's yellow.
yeah,
Somebody put something yellow in me. I'm like, I'm definitely not gonna survive this for an hour. I'm done. I'm dead. Thank you.
right. Oh my gosh. Oh, also, a really interesting story about traveling. A best way to meet people: get bitten by a monkey in India, and then have to take the rabies vaccination or shots around. Because this happened to me in India. I was bit by a monkey, and I had like 6 weeks of travel left, but I had to take is it anti rabies shots?
Yeah.
And I do not do needles, so I was like finding people in like the different countries in airports and little doctors' offices and other places to give me shots, but it was a beautiful way to meet people, meet locals. So one extreme way to make friends. Yay.
Wait here. You got bit by a monkey. Of course, you're not rabies vaccinated because
No. Yeah.
that is an expensive and long ordeal. I have worked as an animal control officer, so I've
Oh,
done the rabies vaccination,
okay. Oh
and
my
I
God.
still have good titers. So, but I don't intend to be bit by a monkey.
Oh,
But how many? Like I know the process here. You have to take X amount of shots. How were they prepared of that? Was that kind of a quote unquote common thing? It sounds like.
I think it is. I was in Jaipur, India, and there's this monkey temple, and I didn't have things hanging out of everywhere, but there's like four monkeys that just jumped on me, and I reacted, and one bit me on the back. And this is kind of common. There's lots of monkeys there, and they had that. They had the rabies shots in a doctor's facility, a little tiny one, which also was an ordeal because I had a flight the next day, and I barely made it to the appointment in the next morning, and the hotel was so kind to like help me organize that, and that was really scary because I'm like quality or what is this or how do I do it, because I had to keep it cold as well, and I had so much time I was going to be traveling. But being creative, it really when it's about medical issues, you learn to be resourceful and not panic, but really, I'm not joking about a nice way to meet people, and people are really kind. I almost got denied at security checks because I had the needles and stuff, so it was an extra process of getting it through customs and such, or security. Um,
Did
but
you
it's
did
fortunate.
you fly back to US or where did you go back to? Where did you live?
I
When
lived in Japan and I was traveling India to the Maldives and Oman and other places. So it was interesting
What
places.
when you came back?
Pardon?
Did you have to do any follow-up with the
Uh,
medical stuff when you
I
came?
finished my last shot in Japan and they said it was fine. It wasn't like a piercing pinch. I think it was more like just like to be okay about it. But I find it hilarious because I was in Sri Lanka at an elephant park, and I went to the restaurant across the street and asked them if I could put it in their freezer, and like obviously paid them for their services, but just the random places I had to find places to put it in the cold on the airplanes with the host attendants. So if you ever see this, thank you again for all your help, everyone.
Wow, that's what I say. Expat life gives you weird and fun, interesting stories.
Yeah.
Like, how do you have to even just deal with that and just the anxiety of shit? Do I have rabies now?
That's true. You know, I kind of take it for granted because I've been through it, but it's really a beautiful moment to take note of like what you've gone through and how resilient, and also the fear that you get over. Like I've gone through. Actually, I had people make fun of me because I always have some creature biting me. I was in Australia. I missed a flight because I couldn't. Pardon?
You're too sweet.
Oh, shucks. I like that. Thank you. No,
They like
but
you're sweet.
yeah, there's so many stories of me being bit by things and a couple times unsure of what they were and missing flights. And I was in the jungles of Sumatra and I had this just I woke up with like spots all over my arm and they think it was a caterpillar. There's a special caterpillar there that if it touches you and then I scratched in the night and it just spread. So I was looked like something I never want to look like again. And then we had to raft down out of the forest to get anywhere, and that was stressful. But also, I survived. Survival story. Maybe that's my thing. I don't know.
Yeah, that's you're going on trips and all these adventures, and it's all about I'm going to survive this.
Yeah, I think I like manifest like the challenge because I told you I like challenges. So level up with the creatures of the world.
So
Um,
what challenge is next then?
It's funny. What challenge is next? Well, just getting our bank sorted in France seems like a challenge. Besides that, intentional challenges, um, building my business in a foreign country is a challenge, but also one that I'm very excited to do.
What do you do then? I know what you do, but tell the audience.
Yeah.
'Cause now they're really curious. If you say A, you got to say B.
Yeah, so I am a life coach predominantly for expats, and all these things, these challenges, these stresses and anxieties that we've been talking about, like I've lived them clearly, and helping people to get the balance through all of that when you're moving abroad and trying to feel at home abroad and make friends or figure out the process of the bureaucratic needs of the country or what to do.
Because
And
I lived homesickness. I lived a year in Switzerland and
yeah.
went to an American boarding school. Um, and I had at that time never experienced homesickness. I've never been away from my family. And
Right.
that was something I was not prepared of at all.
Yeah.
Um, and I bet that a lot of expats has a deal of that moving or
Yeah.
away
Can
from
I ask
home.
you what helped you? Because one important thing to remember is we could give a lot of advice and tell people how to do it, but I think one of the most important thing is finding what works for us, what really we need, and the thing that we are missing, and how to adapt to that exact thing. Maybe it's community, maybe it's your family, maybe it's just like finding balance or building a habit or hobby. So many different things can work.
Right. So at the time I was 18, um, and what actually helped me was that first of all, talking to my family on the phone. It
Mm.
was just about to be a thing back then. This is back in 98, 99. It must be. So emails were just about to be something. But talking to mom and have the opportunity, like I talked to both my mother, my grandparents every day on the phone. And I think that was the only way because there was no other Swedish people there that I
Mm.
could speak to. I was almost thrown into the jungle and good luck, have fun. And which looking back, I'm glad I did it because I don't think that I would have had the courage to move to Texas if I wouldn't have taken that year at a boarding school and really been thrown into the wolves. It wasn't the wolves, but you know what I'm saying? It's like there's no way out. My family would not allow me to come back unless I graduated. So, and then Christmas break came and I could go home for 2 weeks, I think it was something like that, and that
Yeah.
just like, "Okay, the world is still here even if I'm not here." That was a confirm and
Yeah.
comforting thing. So, yeah.
That makes yeah.
And
That
then
makes
social media wasn't it was kind of this is kind of a funny thing, actually. Social media wasn't a thing. Facebook came right when I was there, and that was when they were doing this, only for colleges. And
okay.
yeah, and Lausanne American School was one of the trial schools.
What?
I have been on Facebook since it started.
That's amazing. That's fun. That's a fun story. I totally forgot it started with universities too. How
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
And I want to say thank you to your grandparents and your family for making you stay there. Because yeah, it ended up to be a great thing. And I know that's one of the hard things, like staying. I know a lot of people who don't, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Like trying it in the first place is great, and there's many reasons to leave. But sticking it out too is a very valuable thing because we all kind of like I want to go home at a certain point, and if you can surpass that day and just do one more day at a time, and also set up something like you did that helped you, and going home, knowing when you're going home or knowing when maybe somebody's going to come visit is a huge factor in helping you, like, okay, I can make it to then, or having these milestones and things you're looking forward to, or yes, talking to them every day now that we're so lucky to have the internet and
right.
the
So me,
convenience.
that has absolutely helped me when I moved over here to keep track of people at home and let them know I'm fine. This is what's going on, and I think they have been more curious about what's going on in my life than vice versa. Simply because it's kind of a crazy thing to move away from where you come from, regardless of where or how you move. So absolutely, social media has helped me at least, and I believe it helped a lot of others.
I agree. I'm sure of it for sure. So good. Also, it's funny, like me, my experience this time, it was a little harder also because I'm not 19 and my mom's not 40 and the parents are getting older. So I feel you, whoever's out there listening and they're worried about being far away from like aging parents. Like that is a really big one for a lot of people. And fortunately, my mom could come here, and that's not always the case. But just having the internet and connecting and maybe like celebrating, like having being online during holidays or birthdays, like we're so blessed because you and we're talking about before Facebook, before the internet. I remember my first time I had to write letters, and it was so hard, so I did rely on making the videos, the vlogs of me journaling, like me literally crying myself to sleep. I don't understand anything. These people are weird and different. I came from a town of 2,000 people to Belgium, and like the whole world was different. So I understand it's hard, but also I wouldn't be where I am today without having lived through that. And we do have so many more resources today that help us connect with people. And beyond that, if that's helpful, but doing something like something new, like for instance, in Japan, I try things that I've never imagined myself doing. I tried jujitsu, a martial art, and I feel kind person. I don't want to strangle people. I was in one of my tournaments strangling this girl and winning, but I'm saying, I'm sorry. But the reason I mention that is because I tried something new and I loved it. I hated it the first 2 or 5 times, but doing something new and giving it some chance to be something beyond the first or second, because so often we don't like things the first time. Trying new things you never imagined, like endless possibility.
Where you coming?
Pardon?
Adapt to the cultural where you're going.
Exactly.
And like I always say, we have a midsummer celebration in Sweden, and anybody who knows what it is, we're basically having a cross with two rings on the end, and we decorate this cross, and then we dances around this cross to celebrate
Mm,
harvest and summer. That's what it's all about.
yeah.
And I said, a lot of Swedish organization around the world does this celebration in May, June every year. And I think if you are somebody moving to Sweden,
Mm,
embrace that tradition, join that tradition. And even like I had until I moved here, never celebrated Thanksgiving, never in my life. I've
mm,
like, sure, I've eaten the food, but I've not intentionally of
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, so to say, and just embrace that. 4th of July, I'd never like that would never happen. Why would you celebrate that anywhere else in the world than US,
Yeah.
right? But just embrace the traditions and cultural and try to maybe not blend in, but be a part of where you're moving to.
Yeah. Oh, Cecilia, I love that so much. So true. And it does help you connect with people. And anywhere you're talking with people, they like to talk about themselves and their culture. And if you just ask questions, you don't have to have a large language range to just like ask and be curious. And that like curiosity is such a beautiful skill to build.
Keep an open mind is my
Mm.
recommendation. Always, always. Be a
Yep.
little bit crazy. I think all expats are a little bit crazy just for whatever reason you're moving, but you're actually doing kind of a big thing. You're leaving something behind, starting yourself a quote unquote new life for whatever reason. There are
Mm.
millions of reasons. So yeah,
100%.
it's always fun. So where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years? Are you still gonna be sitting in France or are we gonna explore another country?
This is a huge question. And my husband and I talk about it a lot. It might depend on his work. We would love to maybe go Switzerland or the Netherlands or Germany, but I don't know, back in Japan eventually. I'm a person that could be anywhere and make it my home and adapt, so it's fine. And now being in Europe, I can go everywhere so easily. So being in France would be fine too. So I don't have an answer, and I love to like, we'll see. Que sera, sera is the thing that.
Right. And that's just one beauty of it. You just
Yeah.
don't you don't necessarily need to have a plan either. Like
Yeah.
you've been there, what, 10, not even a year. So why even, but maybe had a vision of or a dream of any place you want to just travel to and visit?
Ooh.
Your bucket,
Well, huh?
your bucket list for traveling.
Yes. Well, because of COVID, I think we all have a story of something that was canceled. My husband and I were married in 2019, and we wanted to go to Machu Picchu for a hike, and we never got to do that for our wedding. What's that thing people do? Honeymoon.
Honeymoon.
I'm really new at this marriage stuff, just joking. But that was one thing we wanted to do, and someday that will be something we do. And yeah, that's
That
it. If I could only travel to one more place in life, it would be that, and I'd be happy because I feel so blessed and thankful for the life I've lived. But I do love to have a bucket list forever going.
right. Well, yeah, you can always add to the bucket list.
Yes. What's on your bucket list? The top place if you could leave tomorrow.
So I would love to go to New Zealand and Australia. That's Japan as well. Um, that's traveling, and then I would love to go to a safari just because that sounds very fun.
Mm. Animals make
Yeah,
sense.
right. I'm an animal lover.
Yeah.
When it comes to moving, I don't see myself moving away from Texas unless I win the lottery. And if I win the lottery, it's probably going to be that I move back to Florida.
Hmm.
I love Florida weather.
So many possibilities.
Closing the circle a little bit, but yeah, that would be my travel bucket list. I would love to go back to Singapore at least once in my life again because I love Singapore.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. It is nice. What did you like about Singapore?
I think the entire thing. I was there as an 11-year-old girl. My mom worked there, so we lived there for 6 months, and everything, as an 11-year-old girl, everything was big, huge. Like, yeah, I was this tall and
Right.
blonde, long hair, and there was this guy following us every time we went out of the hotel because we lived at a hotel at the time. Um, and I didn't figure out why he was there. I saw him as my mom's coworker, and on the flight home, we called him Alex, and that was probably not his name either. I was like, "Are you gonna miss Alex?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna miss Alex." And she's like, "You never figured out why he was always with us." I was like, "He was your coworker, I guess. He helped you out because just he helped her out with all kinds of stuff." And he's like, "No, that was your lifeguard."
Oh,
I'm like,
what?
"You said what?" It's like, yeah, they were so afraid of us moving to Singapore
Oh,
because I had long and I could sit on my hair, long
oh,
blonde hair. So I stack out so much from everybody else, like all this black hair and then one blonde spot there. So they
interesting.
were afraid of me being kidnapped. So this Alex was my bodyguard for 6 months.
That's interesting. Wow.
But
This
yeah,
is an extreme example, but that's such an interesting thing to talk about with like standing out in different countries, like how people deal with that. But you didn't know at the time. Have you been in another culture like where you like obviously stood out?
I always stand out. I walk in a room and I stand out. It
Oh,
doesn't matter.
right, own it. Ah, beautiful.
Right. I'm kind of that. I have that personality. I'm a loud person, regardless if I don't want to be. So it's I don't know. I grew up on a stage. My grandmother was an opera singer, and she put me on the stage since I was basically 4 years old. So I guess I'm kind of used to stage light and being different and like having that kind of
Yeah.
attention, whether I want it or not. Um, so I make myself comfortable in awkward situations.
That
Yeah,
awesome skill.
that's
No, it's an amazing skill. And I was just thinking of like where obviously in Japan I would stand out and I talk to people about this all the time, or maybe India or China. Like I remember like parents in the middle of a rainstorm pulling me aside and putting me out in this rain to take a picture with their children because I was obviously foreign and they would want to take pictures with you. Same thing in India or in Japan, like little kids would like hide behind their parents because you're a foreigner. And um, yeah.
Yeah,
Things
I had that a lot happening when I was in Singapore, and I remember Alex, he was right there, like, he was ready to snag me if somebody even tried to get close to me, so but I never was I never felt it, I'd never even got the hint that, "Oh, this guy is my lifeguard for 6 months."
like,
So, I guess
oh, he
he
was
did
just
very
so good at his job.
yeah, he was great
Huh.
on his job, yeah, and he was an American living in Singapore, that was his job, he was just lifeguard for international people. He got the assignment of watching me for 6 months.
That is such I've never heard a story like that. So unique.
Yeah, so awesome. Well, thank you so much, LeeLee, for joining me. Anything you want to add before we close this up?
Well, good question. There's so many things I'd like to add, but I just hope that it was beneficial to people watching. And if you want to carry the conversation forward with Cecilia or myself, whatever you're thinking with expat life, there's answers out there for you. And don't be afraid to step into that, even though it is scary. Like I just love finding that the fear is kind of like your intuition guiding you because it keeps coming. If you're thinking about it, it keeps coming. So try it out. You don't have to move abroad. You can study abroad or just travel and get a feel for it. I sometimes in the U.S. go to another state. It's like a whole another world. But I know so many people in life who dream of this and they never find the way that works for them to say yes to themselves in this way. And it just breaks my heart. So that's what I think Cecilia and myself want to support people in just making that path a reality. So just know it's possible and there are answers out there. And thank you for listening. And thank you, Cecilia, for this platform. A lovely conversation. We could talk for days, I'm sure, but I just appreciate you and your lovely dogs, adorable doggies.
Hey, for those of you who've been watching the YouTube here, Sam Mam has been snagging in a little bit, but at least he's been quiet. Sometimes he goes in with some barks, and it doesn't matter. I've stopped cutting him out because he's deaf, so it doesn't matter. I can't yell at him; he won't hear me anyway.
He has experiences to share in English too, so we're happy that he's there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and for all of your listeners and viewers. I will see you in 2 weeks, and
Cheers.
travel around the world and be safe. Bye, everyone.